Hi, welcome back to Learn Buffalo in Go. Today we're looking at how to use the Buffalo CLI to build a production binary, some of the flags we can pass, and the best steps we want to take in order to get our application ready to deploy on a server. Before we jump in to see how the Buffalo CLI works, remember there is a good documentation on the Buffalo docs. We just jump in and type Buffalo build. Buffalo will run without any sort of status update, but we should expect to see our binary produced in the bin folder. When we use the Buffalo CLI to generate our project, it does set some defaults, and the name of the binary is one of those. We could change it if we wanted here in this config buffalo-app file. We also have the option of passing the O flag to specify the name of the binary. So by default, Buffalo build runs without any real status updates. We can pass the V flag to enable verbose mode. Here's a full list of some of the flags we can pass. Another good one is this clean assets flag. When we run Buffalo in dev mode, Webpack will continue generating front-end asset files, and those can build up over time. This flag will clear out that folder before running Webpack again, and it can help keep the size of your production binary to a minimum. Running Buffalo build is one of the first steps to get our app ready for production. Up to now, we've been running in development mode. To move to prod, we're going to run in production mode. What does that mean? A couple things happen when we enable production mode in Buffalo. Buffalo is going to use the database credentials from the production set in our database.yaml file. In production settings, it can be helpful to use the URL environment variable. This is one long string that contains all the parts that we would need to connect to the database. Number two, Buffalo is going to force all traffic to HTTPS. That happens in the app.go file. If you need to disable that to run in production mode, you can do that there. Number three, Buffalo is going to show production error pages. That's for 404 and 500 errors. In dev mode, Buffalo shows a lot of debugging and logging information. None of that is available when running in production. And number four, running in production, there can be some changes to our .env file. Depending on how we're running it, we may need to change the port we're using. We can use the .env file to set production mode here with the go_env variable. Running in production, Buffalo assumes the host address is 0000. If you're running on a local host, you may need to set that address to 127.0.0.1. And running in production will also see an error message that the session secret is not set if you haven't done that. You can set that here in the env file. So let's look at how that works on my local development environment here if we try to run in production mode. So if we set production mode in our .env file, run build, and try to run the application, we can see some of these errors. Session secret is not set. The application is starting at 0000. Let's fix those. So our app starts, but it's trying to forward us to HTTPS. We can disable that in our app.go file. So it can be a little tricky. The browser wants to send us to HTTPS, but if we disable cache, we can get back to our site, now running in production mode. What if we want to enable SSL? Go back to our app, turn this back on. If we look in the main.go section, I've added this section here. Normally the app runs by just calling app.serve, but we can actually create our own server and pass it to the serve method. So here we're creating a simple server, wrapping it in TLS, and then passing it to app.serve. But in order to run wrap TLS, we need to specify the CRT and the key files. So if you have certs from a certificate authority, you can use those. On my local dev box here, I'm just going to create self-signed certs and show how this works. So running this in Chrome so there's no confusion with my past sessions on HTTP, we see it's trying to forward us to HTTPS. And Chrome is giving us this warning that there are certs, but they are self-signed certs. So we can proceed just to show how this works. So now we're running an HTTPS, and the site works. Now that we know the difference between dev and production mode, let's take a look at the steps it would take to get this application moved to a server. In this first example, let's imagine we're setting up a server by ourselves. Number one is to set up the server. Ubuntu is a common Linux distribution, but there are some others. Number two would be install and configure a database. Three would be to create that production database. Step four, transfer our app to the server. Run our database migrations with the Buffalo binary, and then we want to run our application on the server. One common method for that these days is systemd. We can create a systemd service to run the application and set some configuration and some restart rules. And number 8 is if we want to run this with HTTPS, we're going to need to set up some SSL certs, and there are different ways to do that. Probably too many for me to cover in this video. Steps 1 through 5 involve setting up a server. There are lots of tutorials about how to do that and different ways to do it. I won't cover that in this video. But let's look at how we would run this application on that server once it's set up. There are two basic ways. We can run Buffalo all by itself. It's a self-contained binary that can run as long as it has that database connection if needed. The other option is to pair it with a proxy, something like Nginx or Apache. The Buffalo docs have some information about using a proxy, as well as information about how to set up a systemd service. So here is my app running on a Linode server. This is an Ubuntu server that I set up as we described. I do have it running in development mode just for simplicity, so we're not on HTTPS. But this is with our app exposed to the internet running all by itself. So this here is the definition for our systemd service. If you compare to the official docs on Buffalo, a couple differences. I'm running a MariaDB server, so after MariaDB service. We set the working directory, and we set the path to the binary. Another difference from the official docs is that I like to use this environment file. So we create a single file with all those environment variables, and systemd loads that when it runs the application. Another option here is to set those environment variables one by one here in the systemd definition. Two important details about running the binary like this just on the internet by itself. I set the port to port 80, the typical port for HTTP communication, and for address we do need to set it to 0000 and not 127.001. So this is our site running all by itself on the internet. What if we want to add a proxy? Our checklist for Nginx, for example, is pretty short. We can install it, add a site configuration for our site, and to keep things simple, we could use Let's Encrypt, the certbot, to manage the SSL certs for us. So over here on my server, we can stop this service from running for now. So once we add Nginx to our server, we can set up the configuration. Something very basic would look like this. We're going to listen on port 80, and it's this last line down here where we do a proxy pass to forward requests to our application running on, in this case, port 3000. So now if we make some changes to our configuration for our app, we want to set the host to 127.001 and set the port to 3000. So with those changes to our Buffalo app, we can stop our service, daemon reload, and restart the service. That will now run on port 3000 and allow requests to forward from Nginx to our Buffalo app. And if we go over here, we can see our app running, and down here the browser tells us that the server is Nginx on Ubuntu. The last step here is to make sure that HTTPS is in use. In order to get HTTPS set up, I had to use a domain that I have, and I used the Let's Encrypt certbot to reconfigure our Nginx configuration to add the HTTPS settings. If you're not familiar with certbot, Let's Encrypt has plenty of information about how to set that up. One thing to keep in mind when running our own server for this application is to double check any paths that might lead back to sensitive information. One is the name of our actual binary that we are hosting on the server. In this case, I modified the name from the default Learn Buffalo, and if we just type that in, we can see that we can actually download our application binary. That is not a good thing. With Nginx, it's pretty simple to control that. This is our Nginx configuration here. We can add something as simple as deny all on the paths that we might have sensitive information. And now you can see we protected that route so users can't download our actual production binary. So those are the basics to getting our Buffalo app running on our own server. Another great way to host an app is on a hosted cloud provider like Heroku or render.com. One common way to do that is inside of a Docker container. And we can do that with Buffalo using the Docker file that comes with Buffalo or make some minor changes. We'll look at that in a future video. But thanks for watching.